Okay, slide number 3. We're moving right along. Not slide number 3, video number 3. We're on slide 9. All right, so when we were talking about lipids, remember we had said we have steroids, and we had just talked about them, right? But then we had said there was this other thing. You know, we had talked about triglycerides, phospholipids, steroids, and eicosanoids. Eicosanoids are based off of something called arachidonic acid. And you might remember this from earlier this semester. Maybe you don't. But anyway, and we had said they're kind of like a hormone, but they're not. So what did we say? We said a hormone is secreted by an endocrine gland. It goes out into circulation and affects something somewhere. Here, when we talk about these eicosanoids, what we're talking about are something called prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are very similar to a hormone, except that they have their effect locally. So they're not secreted into the circulatory system and go and have an effect wherever. They cause their effect right where they're produced. And they're based on this other kind of lipid, which we had talked about being arachidonic acid. And it's what we would call an eicosanoid. And the other thing about prostaglandins is that for the most part, the effect that they have is something you would think of as bad. Pain, inflammation, fever. These are effects of prostaglandins. And so these are a chemical messenger. It's a chemical messenger that is secreted. If you have a headache, it's a problem in your head. You have a problem in your head, and you feel it as pain there. And pain functions as it's important so that it gives you feedback, so you know you have a problem. It ends up that you don't have to tolerate pain, do you? Why not? You have things. Back in my day, anyway, you didn't take Advil, you took aspirin. Well, it ends up, and the pain magically went away. But what's going on here? We said you have a problem, and you're blocking the pain signal. So what you're doing is you're blocking the production of the prostaglandin through the pill. And so it ends up that aspirin interferes. I'm having to look to get the exact name. It blocks an enzyme called cyclooxygenase. And that's all part of this process of producing the prostaglandin that says, oh my God, I got a headache. And so that's how painkillers, especially aspirin, anyway, in detail, how it affects this prostaglandin. Now, prostaglandins cause contractions and some other things as well. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about the reproductive system. One final point about them, though, is that name, prostaglandin. You know why they call them that? It's because they were originally isolated from the prostate gland. So go figure, they named them prostaglandins, and it ends up you've got them everywhere, but that was the original discovery of prostaglandins. All right, some more basic kind of control stuff. So when we get to slide number 10, we talk about some more basic kind of control stuff with regards to the endocrine system. And it ends up that we have sort of 3 major pathways for controlling the release of hormones, these chemical messengers. So we mentioned prostaglandins, and that's all we're saying about them. Now we're going back to hormones. And I talked already about one of the major ways that we control the release of hormones. We had said we have this hypothalamic pituitary axis of hormones with the tropic hormones in between that ultimately you're going to produce something like thyroid hormone. And what happens is the final hormone builds up and it stops the release of the two tropic hormones. And so this, we had said, is a negative feedback mechanism, and many, many, many hormones are controlled in this manner. Now, what's another way that we control hormones? It's nervous system. It ends up, we've got some things called epinephrine and norepinephrine, ones that I'm thinking of in particular. And then there's another we'll mention. It's released in response to nerve signals, nerve impulses. So if you get really scared and you get, really scared, you get adrenaline, right? I got a hit of adrenaline. Well, what you're talking about is epinephrine and norepinephrine. And they have this major, fight or flight kind of an effect, but it's directly in response to a nerve signal. So pathway number 2 has to do with nerves directly controlling the release of a hormone. The third way that hormones are controlled is through serum levels of something. And we had said, when we were talking about bones, we had talked about calcium ions. We had said calcium ions are pretty darn important to bones, but they're even more important to the nervous system and the muscular system. And so your serum, and we had said that when your blood calcium level is low, you end up stripping calcium out of your bones. And then when they're high, when your blood calcium level is high, you end up building bone. So this is a third way that we are controlling hormones, is through monitoring of serum blood levels. Okay. All right, so I see slide number 11 is talking about tropic hormones. We've already talked about that. Slide number 12 will be what we start on next. I'm going to stop right here because it's kind of a transition. We so far, all the way through these first, 11 or 11 slides, it looks like. Through these first 11 slides, we have been talking about sort of big picture stuff, right? We were talking about how, the different categories of hormones, how things are released, how you stop the effect of a hormone, all of this stuff. Now we're going to talk about the individual hormones. So I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.